We live in a time of rising tides, literal and metaphorical. Climate change isn't just a scientific issue. It's a story of denial, delay, and the quiet unraveling of systems we thought were stable. And like any story worth telling, it's filled with characters: skeptics, advocates, profiteers, and those caught in the crossfire. This is my attempt at a principled response to misinformation, a refutation not just of flawed facts, but of the emotional scaffolding that holds them up. Each myth is more than a misunderstanding. It's a narrative detour that delays action and distorts truth. But truth has texture, it has history, and it deserves to be told with nuance, clarity, and care. Many activists have taken the wrong approach and made poor choices in how they present climate change. This resulted in a backlash of annoyance and opposition. It feels like yet another attempt to take away the familiar and useful. I understand the potential for mission creep and the exhaustion that follows. A global effort is required. And when activists pile the burden on what amounts to the few, it smacks of unfairness, because it is unfair. So whether you're responsibly organizing, educating, creating, or simply listening, thank you. If you ultimately don't care what happens, that's fair. At least you're being honest. And if you feel it's too much to deal with, that's fair too. My self-set task is presenting the information and letting you decide. You're part of the story.
So, let's begin.
1. Climate has always changed. This is just natural variation. It's true that Earth's climate has fluctuated over millennia, but invoking ancient ice ages or medieval warm periods to dismiss today's crisis is like comparing a candle flicker to a house fire. Natural cycles, like Milankovitch orbital shifts, unfold over tens of thousands of years. What we're witnessing now is a spike so abrupt and intense that it defies geological precedent. The last century's warming isn't part of a gentle rhythm. It's a jarring crescendo driven by human activity. Ice core data, tree rings, and sediment layers all tell the same story. The planet's temperature is rising faster than at any point in the past 10,000 years. And unlike past shifts, this one coincides precisely with the industrial boom and the burning of fossil fuels. To call it natural is to ignore the fingerprint analysis, carbon isotopes, atmospheric chemistry, and radiative forcing, all pointing directly to us. 2. It's cold outside, so much for global warming. This argument confuses weather with climate, like mistaking a single frame for the entire film. Weather is local and short-term. Climate is global and long-term. A cold snap in Texas doesn't negate the fact that the planet's average temperature is climbing. In fact, extreme cold events can be amplified by climate disruption. Polar vortex instability, for example, is linked to Arctic warming. Think of it like a fever. If your body temperature is rising overall, you might still feel chills. The Earth's fever manifests in chaotic patterns: heat waves, floods, droughts, and yes, even freak snowstorms. The key is trend, not anecdote. And the trend is unmistakable. 19 of the 20 hottest years on record have occurred since 2001. 3. Scientists disagree. There's no consensus. This myth thrives on outdated or cherry-picked data. In reality, the consensus is overwhelming. Over 97% of actively publishing climate scientists agree that human activity is the primary driver of recent global warming. That's not groupthink, it's convergence across disciplines: atmospheric physics, oceanography, glaciology, and more. Dissenters often cited are either not climate scientists or are funded by industries with vested interests. The illusion of debate is manufactured, much like the tobacco industry once sowed doubt about smoking's health risks. Consensus doesn't mean unanimity, but it does mean that the evidence is so robust, so repeatedly confirmed, that denial requires willful ignorance or ideological bias. 4. CO2 is just plant food. It's good for the environment. Yes, plants need CO2, but this argument is like saying water is good, so floods must be beneficial. The balance matters. Excess CO2 traps heat in the atmosphere, destabilizing ecosystems faster than plants can adapt. While some crops may grow faster in high CO2 environments, the accompanying heat stress, drought, and nutrient imbalances often negate those gains. Moreover, forests, the lungs of the planet, are suffering. Increased CO2 doesn't protect them from firewoods, pests, or deforestation. Coral reefs, oceanic food chains, and polar habitats are collapsing under the weight of warming and acidification. CO2 isn't a fertilizer in this context, it's a destabilizer. 5. Climate models are unreliable. They can't predict the future. Climate models aren't crystal balls. They're tools built on physics, data, and probability, and they've proven remarkably accurate over time. Models from the 1980s predicted today's warming with striking precision, even accounting for variables like volcanic eruptions and solar cycles. They're constantly refined, tested against real-world data, and updated with new insights. Critics often misunderstand what models do. They don't predict exact temperatures on specific days, but they simulate scenarios based on emissions, feedback loops, and policy choices. It's like forecasting the trajectory of a storm. You won't know the exact raindrop, but you'll know where the flood risk lies. And right now, the models are flashing red. Point 6. Melting ice doesn't raise sea levels, just like ice cubes don't raise the water in a glass. This claim confuses two very different types of ice: sea ice and land ice. It's true that when ice cubes float in a glass of water, their melting doesn't cause the water level to rise. That's because the volume of water displaced by the ice is already accounted for. It's Archimedes' principle in action. The ice displaces its own weight in water, so when it melts, it simply fills the space it once occupied. But land ice, like glaciers and ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica, are a different story. It's not floating in the ocean, it's perched on land, like a frozen reservoir. When it melts, it's like turning on the tap and adding new water to the glass. That water wasn't part of the ocean before, and now it is. The result? Sea level rise. And unlike the gentle overflow of a kitchen sink, this influx threatens coastal cities, ecosystems, and millions of lives. Point 7. Volcanoes emit more CO2 than humans. This myth sounds dramatic but collapses under scrutiny. Volcanoes do emit carbon dioxide, but their annual output is dwarfed by human emissions. On average, volcanoes emit about 200 million tons of CO2 per year. Humans, over 35 billion tons. That's more than 175 times as much. Even the most active volcanic years barely register compared to the relentless burn of fossil fuels. It's like blaming a matchstick for a house fire while ignoring the roaring electrical fire in the basement. Volcanoes are part of Earth's natural carbon cycle, and their emissions are episodic. Human emissions, by contrast, are constant, accelerating, and cumulative. The climate doesn't care about drama, it responds to volume, and our industrial footprint is deafening. Point 8. Climate change is a hoax invented for control. This claim isn't just false, it's corrosive. It reframes a planetary emergency as a political ploy, undermining decades of research, indigenous knowledge, and lived experience. Climate science isn't a monolith, It's a mosaic of disciplines, cultures, and data sources converging on the same conclusion: the planet is warming and we're the cause of imbalance. To dismiss it as a hoax is to ignore melting glaciers, shifting seasons, dying coral reefs, and displaced communities. It's also a form of gaslighting, telling those who suffer from floods, droughts, and wildfires that their pain is imaginary. The real control isn't in climate action, it's in denial, which protects polluters and delays justice. 9. Animals and plants will just adapt. It's nature's way. Adaptation is part of evolution, but it's not a magic wand. Species evolve over generations, not decades. The current rate of climate change is so rapid that many organisms can't keep up. Coral reefs bleach and die, migratory patterns collapse, and ecosystems unravel. It's not adaptation, it's attrition. Think of it like forcing a tree to sprint. Nature's resilience has limits, and we're testing them. Some species will adapt, yes, but many will vanish. Biodiversity loss isn't just sad, it's destabilizing. Every extinction is a thread pulled from the ecological tapestry, and eventually the whole weave begins to fray. Point 10. Renewables can't replace fossil fuels, they're too weak. This argument underestimates both technology and momentum. Solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, and even nuclear are no longer fringe, they're surging. In many regions, renewables are now cheaper than coal and gas. Battery storage, smart grids, and decentralized energy systems are transforming what's possible. The issue isn't weakness, it's inertia. Fossil fuels are entrenched, not superior. Their dominance is historical, not inevitable. Transitioning to renewables isn't just feasible, it's already happening. The challenge is scaling fast enough to meet the crisis. Saying renewables are too weak is like dismissing a sapling while ignoring the forest they're becoming. Point 11. Climate change is just a way to push taxes and regulations. This claim reframes survival as bureaucracy. Yes, climate policy involves taxes and regulations, but so does every public safety measure. Clean water, asbestos, food safety, all required rules. Climate action isn't about control, it's about accountability. Polluters pay. Clean innovators thrive and communities gain resilience. Framing it as a tax grab ignores the cost of inaction: trillions in disaster relief, lost crops, health crises, and infrastructure collapse. Climate policy isn't a burden, it's a lifeline, and like any lifeline, it requires structure. The alternative isn't freedom, it's chaos. And who benefits from that chaos? 12. Climate change is just a theory, not proven fact. This statement misuses the word theory. In science, a theory isn't a guess. It's a framework built on evidence, tested repeatedly, and refined over time. Gravity is a theory. Evolution is a theory. Climate change is a theory in the same way. It explains observed phenomena with predictive power and empirical support. Calling it just a theory is like dismissing a bridge design because it's based on engineering theory. The climate theory is backed by satellite data, ocean measurements, ice core records, and atmospheric chemistry. It's not speculative. It's explanatory, and it's been proven not just in labs, but in the lived experience of communities worldwide. 13. Humans are too small to affect something as big as the Earth. This myth leans on scale to excuse impact, but small things can have massive effects. A virus can shut down economies. The small molecules of CFCs once tore a hole in the ozone layer. Human activity, especially industrial-scale burning of fossil fuels, has altered the composition of the atmosphere, changed ocean chemistry, and reshaped ecosystems. We've moved mountains, dammed rivers, and lit up the night sky. Our footprint is planetary. To say we're too small is to ignore the evidence of our reach. The question isn't whether we can affect the Earth, it's whether we'll choose to do so responsibly. 14. Climate change is good for some places, like making cold regions warmer. This argument cherry-picks short-term benefits while ignoring long-term harm. Yes, some regions may experience temporary agricultural gains or milder winters, but these are fleeting and often offset by droughts, pests, and ecosystem disruption. Warming isn't a gift, it's a destabilizer. Moreover, climate change isn't evenly distributed. Vulnerable communities, often with the least resources, bear the brunt of floods, heat waves, and rising seas. Saying it's good for some is like praising a fire for warming one room while the rest of the house burns. The net impact is negative, and the moral cost is staggering. 15. We'll just geoengineer our way out of it. Geoengineering sounds futuristic, but it's not a silver bullet, it's a gamble. Ideas like spraying aerosols into the stratosphere or fertilizing oceans with iron carry massive risks, unintended consequences, regional climate disruption, and ecological backlash. They're untested at scale and could create more problems than they solve. Relying on geoengineering is like planning to crash a car and hoping the airbags will save you. The better path is prevention, reducing emissions, restoring ecosystems, and transitioning to sustainable energy. Technology can help, but it can't replace responsibility. 16. Climate change is too big. Nothing I do matters. This myth breeds paralysis. Yes, climate change is vast, but collective action is built on individual choices. Every vote, every dollar spent, every conversation matters. Movements begin with voices, not megaphones. And systemic change is driven by cultural momentum, something individuals help shape. Think of it like erosion. A drop of water seems small, but over time, they carve canyons. Your actions ripple outward through your community, your work, your advocacy. Saying, "Nothing I do matters," is like silencing a drumbeat before the march begins. You matter, and the planet needs your rhythm. 17. Climate change is just part of a globalist agenda. This myth reframes climate action as conspiracy, stripping it of its moral urgency. But climate change isn't a scheme, it's a reality, documented by farmers, firefighters, scientists, and frontline communities. The idea that it's orchestrated by shadowy elites ignores the grassroots movements, indigenous leadership, and local resilience efforts that define real climate advocacy. Framing it as a globalist agenda is a distraction tactic, one that protects the profits of polluters. Climate change affects everyone, but not equally. The fight for climate justice is a fight for equity, transparency, and survival. It's not about control, it's about care. 18. We've got time. Technology will catch up. This argument confuses potential with permission. Yes, technology is advancing, but climate change isn't waiting. Every year of delay locks in more warming, more suffering, and more irreversible damage. Betting on future breakthroughs while ignoring present solutions is like refusing to swim because you hope someone invents a boat. We already have the tools: renewable energy, regenerative agriculture, carbon pricing, and conservation strategies. What we lack is political will and cultural urgency. Waiting for perfect tech is a luxury the planet can't afford. The clock isn't ticking, it's tolling. 19. Climate change is overblown. It's not an existential threat. This claim minimizes risk in the face of overwhelming evidence. Climate change isn't just inconvenient, it's destabilizing. Rising seas threaten entire nations. Heat waves kill thousands. Crop failures spark conflict. Ecosystems collapse. The threat isn't abstract, it's unfolding in real time. Calling it overblown is like ignoring smoke because the flames aren't visible yet. Existential doesn't mean extinction tomorrow. It means a fundamental threat to the systems we depend on: food, water, shelter, stability. The warnings aren't exaggerated, they're urgent, and the cost of denial is measured in lives. 20. It's too late. We should just adapt and move on. This myth breeds resignation. Yes, some damage is done, but it's not too late to prevent worse. Every fraction of a degree matters. Every ton of CO2 avoided buys time, saves lives, and preserves ecosystems. Adaptation is necessary, but it's not a substitute for mitigation. Saying it's too late is like abandoning a patient because the diagnosis is serious. The ethical response is care, not surrender. Climate action isn't about restoring a lost past, it's about protecting a livable future. And that future is still within reach, if we choose it. 21. Climate change is just about global warming. This myth shrinks a planetary crisis into a temperature chart. Yes, global warming is a core symptom, but climate change is a system-wide disruption. It's about shifting rainfall patterns, intensifying storms, rising seas, acidifying oceans, and collapsing ecosystems. It's not just heat, it's imbalance. Think of Earth as a symphony. Global warming is one instrument out of tune, but the discord spreads, affecting rhythm, harmony, and flow. Droughts in one region lead to food insecurity in another. Melting ice affects ocean currents, which in turn reshape weather patterns. Climate change isn't a single note, it's a crescendo of consequences. 22. If climate change were real, insurance companies wouldn't insure coastal property, and builders wouldn't keep building there. This myth assumes that profit-driven behavior equals truth, but markets aren't moral compasses, they're lagging indicators. Insurance companies do insure coastal properties, but premiums are rising, coverage is shrinking, and some areas are already being abandoned. Builders keep building because short-term profit often outweighs long-term risk. It's like selling umbrellas during a storm while ignoring the flood warnings. The real story is in the fine print: retreating coverage, government bailouts, and shifting liability. Climate risk is becoming uninsurable in some regions, not because it's fake, because it's too real. And builders, many are betting on subsidies, loopholes, or the hope that someone else will pay the price when the tide comes in. Climate change isn't a distant threat. It's a present reckoning. And while the misinformation is loud, the response can be louder, not in volume, but in depth, in integrity, and in reasonable action. You don't need to be a scientist to speak truth. You don't need to be perfect to usher in change. You just need to care enough to question, to learn, and to act when you can. Because the tipping point isn't some abstract moment in the future. It's us, and it's now. All of us. The point isn't that catastrophic weather doesn't happen now and hasn't happened in the past, but that it will get worse. I don't know how worse, but I'd rather not find out. If the timeline is right, many of us alive today will see major shifts happen. So, if there are things we can do to slow its progression or prevent it, then it's worth thinking beyond ourselves to look at our options. And if there's truly nothing we can do, learn how we can survive and move forward in that new world. I leave it up to you. Whatever you decide, thank you for watching. And stay curious.